Hello everyone, Matt from Model Minutes here and welcome back to the workbench for another unboxing. This week I'm taking a look at this, the ICM Bf109E-4 in 1/72 scale. So join me as I get inside the box and see what this one is like. So without any further ado, let's get stuck straight in. We have on the front of the box this very nice artwork of the 109 at a sort of dusk kind of time of day, ready to go on its night patrol. We can see that this one is painted all in black because, as indicated here, it is a night fighter. Up here we also have an item code of 72134. Down the bottom left it's 1/72 scale, and we've got the ICM logo down here. On the back of the box there's nothing, so let's move on to the edge. On the edge then we've got some information about the kit, mentioning that it's 122mm in wingspan, sorry no that's the length, 122 in length, 137 in wingspan, and there are 44 parts, but it also requires paint and glue, etc. We have an address for ICM and also an importer label too. On the thin edge we have the same information as on the front, and on the other side then we have two images of the paint scheme, one with lowered landing gear and one with raised, indicating that is potentially a feature of the kit. If you know me, you'll know that I do have one particular gripe, and that is making sure that manufacturers put their tooling dates on the front of their boxes or somewhere easy to see. That way we know in the shop when we pick something up whether it's going to be old or new, and also not only the tooling date but also the release date of this particular kit. So say for example this was tooled 10 years ago, that date would be on there, but the release may have been last year, so we know that it's a recent release but of an older tooling. But I'll talk about the tooling of this kit a little bit later. So opening the box then, and if you've experienced ICM before, you know that they come with these very tight sleeves over the top of their boxes, which is fine because they use standard box sizes for most of their kits to fit into. So let's open this one up. As you can see, I've already cut the tape and it's in a little flappy top box, which is quite nice. You reuse these boxes for other things. Let's get everything out and we will look at the instructions first. So we've got a couple of little sheets here. Not much to look at. We've got one A4 sheet with our instructions on, and I think this is the front page. Yeah, this is this first page. At the top we've got a sprue map. It indicates that there are some parts in the kit which we don't need. I'm guessing that in particular is a tropical filter for an E7 variant, so you could build different variants but we don't need them for this kit. Again, there are alternative canopy parts which are not needed. We get into our construction then, and we have various parts for the cockpit, but no pilot that can be seen in these instructions. The cockpit components get glued inside the fuselage. We have a filter which gets glued on the side. Then we add our wings and cowling for the nose and our tail surfaces. We also have a 3-component landing gear for the door, leg and wheel. And if you flip over, we have the choice to glue them in the lowered position. However, I think it may be possible to glue them in the raised position simply by cutting that piece there and gluing it in position. However, I couldn't say that for definite without trying it. Because there's no pilot, I'll probably end up doing mine with the wheels down. We do have the aileron anti-fluttering weight balancers here as well as a pitot tube and some components for the engine air intake there. Propeller assembly which gets attached at this point, and then we also install our canopy components, and we do have the armored plating which goes inside of the canopy for the E4 variant, and it looks like we have a bit of an option to include more bulletproof glass if we want to. We do have paint color callouts here which are the model master colors, but you could naturally pick your own ones. And we do have some safety information here as well. This is printed primarily in black and white. We have got some red, but no, colours aren't particularly called out in colour, which makes a slightly older feel to the instructions, but generally easy enough to understand. Then we come on to our painting instructions. There's nothing on the other side. And I would like to say that these are printed in full colour, but seeing as the aircraft is a night fighter and it's painted all in black, It looks black and white, doesn't it? So we have this particular E4 used in Germany in 1941 and painted all black all over, grey landing gear legs, but generally not too complicated. So that's why I went for it. I could probably paint this up fairly quickly. I would like to have canopy masks included in the kit, but that's something I may have to look at getting separately, or otherwise just mask it myself. So instructions, easy enough to follow, not too bad. So moving on, we have our decals, and I'm not sure it says who's printed these, but they look okay. I don't think I've really built any ICM kits before. I do have the i5 in the stash, which I've not yet got around to. So I can't really speak for the quality of ICM transfers, but they look to be pretty nice. The printing is generally legible. There doesn't seem to be any registration issues. The colours are nice and vibrant. The decal film doesn't look overly thick. There's no tears or blemishes. And also the decal film isn't like massive around the outside. On some kits you get decals which are only small, but they've got massive blobs of decal film, but these are quite tight. But yeah, so a nice little sheet there, which I hope should apply to the model really well. So let's now look at the plastic parts, and there's one sprue. So let's get this out. We'll put that one down there, and also we'll look at the clear parts first. There we go. So clear parts then. As mentioned on the sprue map, we have a option here for something else, which I don't think we need. There is a bit of flash on these parts. Canopy frames are very fine. There's not really that much to them. May present a challenge in painting. There seems to be a bit of a scratch down the middle of this one here, which is a shame. Plastic is generally quite clear, but you know, not the best canopies I've seen, but acceptable. Not too bad. So clear parts done. Let's look at the single sprue that we have, and the plastic doesn't feel greasy. It feels a little bit flexible, which isn't too bad. There is a bit of flash. There's quite a bit of flash on a few parts, not masses, but like bits that will need trimming. It's on most elements in a few places here or there. This kit does benefit from a reasonable level of detail. We've got recessed panel lines. We've got some representation of the ribbing there on the flaps and the ailerons. No flap option to have it lowered. We don't have a pilot I can see on here, so that's definitely not in existence. No separate parts for raised landing gear, but I hope if you wanted to raise them, it would be a matter of just gluing them in the up position. You can see that our air intakes on the bottom are pre-molded into the wing. Generally doesn't look too bad. We have our cowling part here with a little bit of flash on it. I think people will probably look at this and say, hey, it looks awfully similar to the Airfix version and how the Airfix version is assembled. But Airfix have an actual engine representation inside on their E4 or E3/E4 version, whereas on this it's just nothing, it's just a blank. So you gluing your cowling over the top is probably going to be the best option. The wheels though look really nice. They've got nice level of detail. Ever so slight mold seam around the outside, which will need cutting up, but generally okay. Yeah, not a bad looking kit. On the inside there are some molded representation of details. Ejector pin marks are a little bit proud in a few places, but generally they seem to be in areas where you're not necessarily going to see them, like here in the landing gear bays we've got the detail and then the ejector pins are around it rather than on it. Yeah, so generally speaking, not a bad looking kit. Quite similar in aesthetic to the Airfix version that I've built a number of times. I'd say that Airfix maybe have the slight advantage in mold quality, given that they've had a little bit less flash. I did one recently actually. I did the, where are you? Let me have a look for it. Where have I put that? So I did the E4 version not long ago. And I'd say that the mold quality on this Airfix version was a little bit better. It did come with a pilot, came with flaps that go down, and it also has the option to have the landing gear raised, which I didn't go for in this particular version. But generally speaking, this ICM kit doesn't look terrible, but then there's a good reason why the Airfix version may be slightly better. And that comes down to the age of the tooling, which we'll talk a little bit about later. So swinging back to the plastic is very thin actually, and it's quite flexible, which is a bit of a concern, but I'm sure that it will be something that can be overcome. I have heard in places that this kit does suffer from some fit issues, so I will have to keep an eye out for that, but I can't naturally comment on them at the moment as I've not yet built it. But yeah, on the whole, I think this should build up into a nice representation of the E4, particularly in its Night Fighter paint scheme. So let's round this one off. We had one grey plastic sprue with some relatively nice detailed parts, should build up into a nice representation. We've got some clear parts on a single sprue, which does suffer from a little bit of flash and a few blemishes, but I have seen worse. We've got one sheet of transfers, which I've not experienced from ICM before, but they look to be pretty decent, with some good printing and registration. Our instructions are generally fine as well, and I don't think I'll have any trouble following them when I come to build this one. And I would like to say that they're in full colour, but objectively I don't know that for a fact, seeing as it's black and white. All of which came contained within the standard size box, which most of their kits come in, and had some beautiful artwork. I really like the style of this artwork that they use here. So let's talk a little bit about the price. How much did I pay for this kit? Well, I paid £8.99 for it a little while ago from an online retailer, and it was actually slightly reduced. Generally speaking, here in the UK, it seems to retail for a little bit more, around the £10 to £12 mark, which kind of brings it in line with the price of the Airfix version. But I think if you could get it cheaper, that might be a better way to go. So as mentioned, there's a good reason why this kit doesn't necessarily look quite as good as the Airfix version, and that's down to the tooling age. This kit was originally tooled back in 2004 when it had its initial release, and the Airfix version is, well, like 10 years younger than that, so it's understandable that this one has got a bit more wear and tear due to the number of miles that it's now got on it. The particular version I have here was first seen in 2009. However, I don't think that this is a 2009 release. I think it's more recent than that, potentially in the last few years or so, but it is difficult to pin these down when they do have reintroductions into their range. But generally though, if you could find this kit for £8.99, that's the reason why I bought it, was because it was cheap and it had a simple paint scheme which should allow me to make relatively quick progress in completing this kit. And I don't like to have things in my stash too long, but sometimes they do sit there for a while, so something simple and easy to get completed should help make that transition from sitting on a shelf to being built quite easy. But anyways, what do you think of my review? Do you think my assessment of this kit was fair? Let me know down in the comments. As always, a quick shout out to my channel members and patrons for the extra support they give the channel. Massive thanks to these guys on screen, and if you'd like to join them, take a look at the links in the description. Alternatively, there are other ways to help support the channel if you'd like to support what I do. The best way to support this channel for free though is by subscribing with notifications turned on so you never miss a modelling upload. Finally though, the last thing to say is a massive thank you to you for watching this one, and I'll see you on the workbench again next time.